Hello, everybody. My name is Emer Gallagher, and I'm a senior statistician in the Healthcare Pricing Office. And I'm going to talk today about ABF in emergency departments. And when I say emergency departments, I include injury units in that as well. So I'm going to mention Sláinte Care again, and Sláinte Care sets out the need for expansion into ABF, of ABF in other areas, including EDs. So that's why we're doing this work. So just the agenda for today, I'm going to give a background and overview of the classification. This is the ED classification, urgency-related groups, the pilot in Tullamore Hospital that we did, the collection of data in ED hospitals, the overall process and HPO tasks, and then just the available resources. So background and overview of the classification. A working group was established between ourselves and the HPO led by Brian and the emergency medicine program led by Jerry McCarthy. And we did an international review of the ED systems and we looked at UK, Canada, Nordic countries, Australia, Netherlands, South Africa and Germany. And we agreed that Ireland would adopt the Australian URG classification. And that's the URG classification. And the reason that we chose it was because it was a relevant and mature model. It's alignment to DRGs, as Brian was mentioning there. We use DRGs on the inpatient and day case side. And this is a really good point, the availability of expertise free of charge. I'd say they're sick of me at this stage, emailing them, asking questions, but they answer our questions all the time, and there's no charge for it at all. And the same with the availability of the shortlist and the group are at no cost. So they have all these resources and we get them for free of charge. And they've put a lot of effort and money into it by doing costing studies and see what are the drivers of cost in ED, and we get the benefit of all of that. So it's really good. So urgency-related groups, what are URGs? So an urgency-related group provides a summary of the complexity and type of patients treated within an emergency department. They're similar to DRGs like that. They're a summary of a patient. And like DRGs, they're derived at the patient level. And compared to the 795 DRGs, there's only 114 URGs. And there's 5 factors that determine a URG. So episode end status, type of visit, triage category, and sex and exit diagnosis code. So the first 4 there, we have the PET data, and I see Carly down there from BIU. So BIU look after the patient experience time data, and those 4, the first 4 can be taken from the PET data. So we use discharge destination for episode end status. There's some mapping involved in it, and the same with type of visit. We use attendance type from the PET data, and then triage and sex just taken directly from the PET data. But exit diagnosis code wasn't available in any form in data that we had. So it's something that we need to get. And so that's where the shortlist that we got from Australia comes in. They've taken the full ICD 10 AM and whittled it down to 1,136 codes that are relevant for ED. Like there's tens of thousands of codes in ICD 10 AM, and they've said that 1,136 of those are relevant for ED, which is great because it means that clinicians don't have to be trawling through, and it's not like hype coding, it's just selecting a code from a list. And these codes then can be loaded onto IPIMS or equivalent or whatever the system is in your ED. So just to talk about the pilot in Tullamore. So we decided to carry out a pilot in Tullamore. The purpose was to investigate the feasibility of assigned diagnosis by emergency medicine clinicians for all ED attendances, and then to look at IPIMS for recording diagnosis codes, and then to compare the URG and PET fields to confirm feasibility of using data for ABF. And that's when I was mentioning about the mapping, whether the mapping would work, and then investigate whether pilot data can be grouped to urgency-related groups. So the pilot was carried out between September 2021 and April 2022, and it was a very successful pilot. And it was led out by Dr. Robert Eager in Tullamore and Dr. Thomas McMahon. And the outcomes were that it was feasible to code diagnosis in ED using IPIMS, and that emergency medicine clinicians did code the diagnosis code or select the code. And PET data was used successfully for the pilot, and the pilot data was successfully grouped, and the coding accurately reflected the mix of patients attending ED. Now, that's for the cohort of patients that usually would attend Tullamore. So we were very happy with that, and we were very happy that the shortlist was used, and EM clinicians were able to code it. And there's a full report available if you're interested in the detail. It's quite detailed about mapping and the data and everything from that Tullamore on our website, www.hpo.ie. So then the collection of data in ED hospitals for everywhere else. This might have been shown last year as well. It's just this table shows the list of hospitals that have IPIMS. And as I said, we're working with the Emergency Medicine Program, and they have worked with Deadlist to get the shortlist uploaded onto all IPIMS ED systems. So anybody that has an IPIM site should be able to see the shortlist. And if you can't, contact your local IT. And if you can't, then contact us, myself or Mary Flynn in the Emergency Medicine Program. And then these are the list of hospitals that don't have IPIMS but have maybe their own systems or other systems. And we are working with these hospitals as well to try and get the shortlist uploaded into those hospitals. Crumlin and Temple Street already have it. CHI were very good. I'm still using the hospital groups here because we kind of started before the regions come in, but it'll follow through to the regions as well. So discharge diagnosis coding, what is it? And it's just as simple as assigning a diagnosis code from ED shortlist to a patient when their treatment is finished. And which patients are to be coded. Every patient that is seen, somebody that does not wait doesn't have to be coded, but everybody else should be coded. And who does it? So this is something, when people see coding, and there'll probably a lot of people in here, when you think of coding, you think of HYPE. And so you go straight to the HYPE department and say this belongs to HYPE. But that's the confusing thing. This is nothing to do with HYPE. It's nothing to do with HYPE coders. This is emergency medicine clinicians or equivalent, like our special registers, interns, consultants, or ANPs, selecting a code from the shortlist. It doesn't have anything to do with HYPE. Just to make that clear, because I think that's sometimes a misconception that's out there. Maybe it is unfortunate, just the use of the term coding. And when to do it, as soon as the decision is made to refer or discharge, and how to do it, as I said, using your IT system and your ED, whether that be IPIMS or something else. And as again I said, just check your ED and IPIMS, that it should have the shortlist there. And how is it returned? As I mentioned, it's returned by the PET data. BIU expanded the PET data to include diagnosis, so we get that data now. They send the data through to us then. So the implementation planning meetings, the purpose of these meetings were to meet groups in hospitals and regions to outline how coding, diagnosis coding in ED and the associated URGs will support your ED or injury unit. And we've held meetings with South West Hospital Group, Ireland East and Dublin Midlands. And we've liaised with UL here and that group and CHI, who are already using the shortlist. And then in early June, we're hoping to meet with CELTA and RCSI. And we're also hoping to meet with the REOs as well, and in ABF in a wider context, but also about ABF in ED. And who should attend these meetings? So clinical directors, ED clinical leads, ABF champions, the PASS IT leads and the finance staff. So nearly everybody. Just the steps required at a hospital level, we're asking people to identify a champion, and this is something else. People think that maybe it should be somebody from HYPE, but we're actually saying it should be a clinical person to champion this, to try and lead the introduction and use of the shortlist. So we would say a clinical person. And then step 2 would be to attend an implementation planning meeting. And for those whose groups have already met, there are recordings available for your group, and we go through the steps involved in coding, we go through ABF and ED. And then any questions that anybody had, we answered those. So those recordings are available. And then step 3, to commence the coding. And we're asking people to start coding before the end of 2024. As Brian mentioned, it's essential to make the collection mandatory because we need to have a national data set in order to be able to do ABF. And then step 4, to engage with us in the emergency medicine program, and we're happy to assist in any way that we can to support your ABF journey. The overall process and HPO tasks, so we're not left with nothing to do. The hospitals have to do their bit, but we have our bit to do. So we get the data from the sites, that's what most of this presentation was about, and as I said, to have commenced coding in 2024. But on the costing side of this is Mark and Angay and the team to develop a methodology of costing activity, and then to examine the Australian cost weights for suitability for use in Ireland. And then ourselves in data analytics, obviously we have to group the data, and then we have a data quality team as well in data analytics, and they examine the data across sites for consistency. And then eventually we'll do ABF cost comparison across sites and shadow funding. And I just put an arrow there to ED reporting pack. Once you start coding, you'll receive on a monthly basis an ED reporting pack, and this is developed by our data quality team and Audrey. And I know it's not very clear there, that's on purpose just for data protection, but there's percentage code of the top 10 DRGs, the top 10 URGs, top 10 diagnosis codes. And really, if you want to input into something that you want to see on those reports, you can, and we can provide that. And then just finally, available resources. So as I mentioned, we did recording of the group meetings, and so they're available. But also Dr. Thomas McMahon developed training material on how to code or select a code for the patient, or how to go through it on IPIMS. It'd be relevant to another system as well, and he's developed a lot of other training materials, and they're all available. You just need to get access to, sorry, excuse me, to ShareFile, and you can contact the EMP for that with the email address. These will be available online anyway. And there's just one more thing I want to say, that sometimes we look at this and we say, oh, we're just collecting this data for ABF, you know, but there's a far bigger use for this data. We're really only a secondary use for this data. Like if we get this data, it can be used for decision making and planning and strategy and policy and so many bigger things. So maybe as a statistician, I see that as a better use, but for us, we need it too for ABF, but just to think there's a bigger use for this data. And so that's it. And there are my contact details and Mary's contact details from the emergency medicine program. She's the program manager. And then Sinead, she'll look after the ShareFile access. So that's it. So thanks very much, everybody.